Hey everybody, Game Cave Development. This is going to be a little bit longer than normal because I want to explain what all this is, what I'm doing here. Spoilers for the Game Cave Volume 0, the Guide to Game Cave. Spoilers for this story. So if you don't want to know anything going on, you just you need to go away. You need to go, hey, I'm out of here, and you leave. Okay? So, for those sticking around, let's stick to this. This is what I call my workflow. This is workflow for writing any story. And over the last 4 years or so, I have done a few versions of Game Cave. One as a complete novel, two as a straight comic. And now I'm blending the two together. And given that I've already done this twice, technically 3 times because it's also a game magazine, right? But this is specifically for writing the novel part of it, the graphic novel. Seeing as how it's a a blending of both comics and novels, this is the workflow I've created for figuring that out. First, I create something called a development document, or dev doc, and that takes about a month usually to put together. And what this looks like is, I'll show you the dev doc for Game Cave Volume 0. This starts with the name of the story, generally just the project name, and I come up with the name when the story is done. The size of the final printed book, how many pages I want to do. It's actually 192. That's inaccurate. I gotta fix that. Let's just go right here and type in 192. All right, so older document. And so I go through and I start paginating out the issue, the way I would sort of see the thing fitting into a book. Now, why do I do that first? Well, the reason why I do that first is because this helps create a box to work in. See, I shouldn't have deleted that 162 because that's total 162 of Game Cave pages. Duh. See, I shouldn't be messing with my docs while I'm doing podcasts. I like to work within a box. When I don't have a box, when I don't have a template, like a walls, you'll create endlessly. And I've made this mistake in the past. So now I have limits. I've created a set, box, 192 pages total, digest size, for everything I'm going to do moving forward with my own comics. Why have I settled on 192? Because that is the size of the manga that I enjoy holding up, and I don't seem to have one near me right now. I actually cleaned out my room, I put them away. But that is the size of the manga that I enjoy reading. The lengthwise, sitting down to read, that is what I like. So that is what we're doing. When I get that development doc, now sometimes this is pretty basic. I'm going to show you previews for a story that I have never talked about before called Justice is Served, and kind of show you a more crazy version of this development document where I get into literally an entire character's history, everything I ever want them to do, all the books maybe they have ever been in. This gets way more complicated. And the reason why I do this, future books, all these different, every idea I could ever have for these characters gets put into, this is my workflow for drawing, into these development documents. Why? This way, I know whether, once it's down, whether that's something I want to commit my life to doing in the near future. So sometimes you have an idea, and if you put it into a document and all your ideas are in that document, you walk away from it, you don't care anymore, right? So you don't have to waste any more time than that. Development document first. Once I've decided that's the project I'm going to work on, this case is Game Cave, then I go to a story doc. A story document. Now, the story document is phase 2. It takes about 1 to 2 weeks to put this together, and that looks like this. That's where I take the flow of the book per chapter, and I start to work out the characters' story arcs per chapter. And what I do is I confer these bullet points. I like to write in bullet points. It's just my own personal way of doing it. I confer these bullet points with my character arcs that I've written down in my Scrivener document. So while I'm doing a dev doc, I kind of come up with these characters, and here is where I work out those arcs. I write down their goals, their motivations, their conflicts. and I build their personal timelines where I think things are going to work historically for them as they live through. Sometimes they live a year, a day, a month, wherever their ages are, years. I work it all out. And then I work what it's going to go on in this issue into the flow of the story. And then I check that story against my structural stuff. That can take a week or two. That means I write this stuff out, I organize it, I check the arcs. I go, oh, the arcs say I should do this, or the arcs are weak. This is where I find out whether a character's story arc is weak or strong. And then I come back and modify, go back, modify, go back. Takes about a week or two to do that. But what that helps to do is, once this is worked out, then as I go into writing, I don't have to worry about whether this is all going to make sense in the end. And so with this, I try to keep it fairly surface level, right? I keep the bullet points simple. And then I'll also take, once I'm happy with it, I'll take those words and dump them into, I use InDesign to lay out all my books and stuff. So I'll drop it into InDesign, check the word count, see if it's kind of working, throw it back, just for S and giggles. And when that's good to go, then I turn that into a Rev 1 document. I only do 3 revisions, 2 written, and the third one is the final, gets dropped into InDesign, and that's the final thing, never gets touched again. The first revision is where I convert those simple story bullet points into more detailed bullet points, which in a way is sort of a cross between this. This is one that's more, see here I've even blocked in the pages where I think each thing will go on a certain page. And then I do minimal descriptions for exteriors, interior shots. And this right here is straight dialogue, because in this particular setup, this is like it's like an advertorial. In the book, they're like doing one of those, what do you call those? Infomercials. And so I'm explaining the history of Game Cave in the first few pages through like an infomercial where they're kind of like walking you through the store. And then what I've done there is I initially wrote this out in a separate document. So this was dialogue, and this is another version of that where I've done it that's all just set to their timelines. So normally this would be one document, but this is kind of a special circumstance where I'm trying to make sure I cover a lot of historical knowledge about these characters. And I have worked out each character's history in this book down to the year in Earth years and the year in their years. And their years count down, whereas ours go up. And so I know the history of these characters. So I get these. I'm in the middle of this part, the third part, for all of the chapters in the first volume. This right here, per chapter takes a week. So if in this case, I got about 6 chapters to write. So it's a very simple version. In volume 0, it's mostly game magazine with some minor stuff. So that's going to take about 6 weeks to go through all of those chapters. Now I can do 1 chapter at a time and then go to revision 2, or I can do all chapters in a Rev 1 and then do all chapters in a Rev 2. Depends on what you feel like. At this point, I'm also checking that story to figure out what I want to draw. So as I'm kind of blocking it in, I go, oh, this will make a good, like in this case, I could be like, this would make a good piece of art, the game vault. Anytime they're talking about something specific that's visual, like Power Club, this might be a good piece. So definitely if I have like an exterior shot, like I know, where the exterior shots are, I'm going to want a piece of art. And then when I get this all set up, I'll drop that back into InDesign to line it all up. The last thing I'll do is Rev 2, second to last, but mostly the last. And that's where I take all those bullet points, I delete them, push all the art up into paragraphs, and block in the actual book as you would read it. And that takes a lot. That's just, at that point, I'm just focusing on dialogue and editing and refining text. Takes about a week. I don't have an example for Game Cave Volume 0 yet on this, but I have done that previously when I wrote this as a novel. I ended up with 60,000 words, and I wasn't even halfway through, and then I realized I'm doing too much writing. So I stopped myself and then realigned. So that was 2 years ago. Wow. So I've sort of given myself what you call a crash course into writing. When that gets done, that gets dumped into InDesign and Scrivener, wherever else I'm going to export this as an ebook or whatever. And the Rev 3 isn't a Google document. It's just the final version of the story, whatever, in its printed form or digitally released form. And that's what I'm doing a little bit every day. I do work for about an hour or two while I'm cleaning up my kitchen first thing in the day. And that's how I'm getting all the writing done. As opposed to just trying to say, I'm going to work for 2 hours at night or work here and there. Just working on a little bit every day. And it's actually getting done pretty well. So right now I'm in the middle of Rev 1s for all of the chapters. And so that's what I'm going to be doing. Long Game Cave podcast, just talking about writing that interests you. If there are any questions, just leave them in the comments. Email me directly. I can always make a mini podcast talking about it. Peace, everybody. More soon.